This week, we explore the MCME. What actually is that? Is there a future for a Grand Lodge sanctioned regional Masonic education event? Then, we'll ask the question, why are we even here, and explore one Mason's view on that topic. Then we'll wrap it up with a brand new Masonic Minute featuring Jimmy Doolittle by Stephen L. Harrison. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode number 493. Right away, we want to thank the producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. In order to learn how you can assist this program, please head on over to WCYpodcast.com, click on support the show. You can be like the other folks who have assisted us over the past 10 years since 2011, producing Masonic education for everyone. Again, if you want to learn how you can be a part of it, check that out. This week's episode is a little bit shorter than normal. I had to be more concise because I am flying to Boston for MasonicCon 2020-ish. The conference got pushed back a couple times, and we're still having it limited in-person engagement and an online event. By the time you hear this, the conference will have been over, and I'm hoping you had attended. But for this particular conference, I put together something new. It is a presentation called The Legend of Adam's Grave, as in Adam from Adam and Eve. I gave a short presentation, a kind of stripped down version of this before, but this version is a much more expanded and interesting look at this kind of wild archaeological adventure. This episode comes out right as I step off the airplane, coming home back to Chicago. So I'll say preemptively, it was a wonderful time, my presentation was amazing, you all loved it. But in all seriousness, I want to thank you in advance. If you came out or if you watched, it's just a fantastic time to come together, and we're all looking forward to the next convention right around the corner. And so let's get into this week's education. First, I was just talking about Masonic conferences. And because of that, a lot of people don't know that the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education 2021 just wrapped up. What is the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education? Well, it's been around for decades. It is a multi-state education endeavor funded by Grand Lodges of those Midwest states, and everybody sends their education representatives to the conference. There's a talk, usually a speaker, and we compare and contrast notes on what's working, what isn't working. And so this year was no different. One of the states that supports the Midwest Conference will host each year. And this year, it was supposed to be in Chicago, and we were going to hold it at the Valley of Chicago, Scottish Rite here, but unfortunately, with the pandemic still happening around us, we have been unable to do that, so we held it virtually. I say we, I didn't, but I attended. So this is a slight review, the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education 2021 by Midnight Freemason contributor Robert H. Johnson. The first time I attended the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education, MCME, was 2019. After a stated meeting, I, along with brothers Scott and Spencer, hopped in a car and drove from 10:30 p.m. until 2 a.m., attempting to get to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We arrived at a hotel, and we checked in. I think we were passed out by about 3:30 a.m. We got up after a few hours of sleep and made our way to the conference center, where the event was being held. A really great time and really great presentations. But there were only about 22 people there, which I think I wrote about at the time. It was a bummer. Such an event, a regional one, should have had more people, especially considering this was a multi-state Grand Lodge-funded educational endeavor. Anyway, I digress. Fast forward to a year later in 2020. We obviously couldn't have the event, so it was canceled outright. Fast forward again to 2021. Well, the MCME 21 just wrapped up last weekend, and I can tell you, even for a digital event, they pulled it off, and it was tight. Our president was our Illinois representative, Scott Duvall. Scott is the former head of the Illinois Committee on Education. The events this year garnered the attendance of over 60 attendees, in a virtual form that was not a webinar. Everyone did great and managed themselves perfectly. No hot mic issues. The fellowship was strong and so was the education. Our sessions this year were themed around allowing Masons to get into what matters with education, making it simple, and sending our attendees home with a profound sense of how easy it can be and some tools to make it happen. Chuck Dunning spoke and answered questions about group facilitation of dialogue. We then split into several groups and discussed elements of our initiation using the tools Chuck had just given us. What stuck out? What did we remember? We all shared, and it was excellent. Next, we had the State Education Chair from Ohio, Chad Kopensky, give a talk about personalizing Masonry. As usual, Chad's talk gave me light bulb moments, not unlike the first time I heard him talk in 2019. Then Spencer Hamann, one of our own contributors to this blog, gave a great talk about logic and its use in Freemasonry today. The focus was really about the cognitive biases we have and how we are under the constant threat of failing Freemasonry and ourselves. My takeaway anyway. It was fantastic. Then I was able to read the late, great Ed Runn's obituary. Ed was a huge part of the MCME for many years, and finally, they elected a new board and officers. All in all, it was an awesome day of light. So you're asking, why didn't I know about this? Or maybe, when's the next one? Well, I can't offer you an answer to the first question other than to say some Grand Lodges find this conference unworthy of their attention and do not participate or tell their members about it. But the second question, I have better answers to. Next year's MCME will be in Kansas City, Missouri. The date is being chosen currently, but as soon as I hear about it, bet your bottom dollar, I'll let you all know. Congrats to all the attendees, education officers, and members who went home from this conference with a new set of working tools. Cheers to the board and executive officers for an amazing event. And thanks to Chuck Dunning, Spencer Hamann, and Chad Kopensky for your great presentations. I'll see you all next weekend in Massachusetts for MasonicCon 2020-ish. Well, that's the short review that I gave, and of course, I just got home from MasonicCon, so I hope I saw you there. But for our Craftsman Plus out there, I just want to ask one question. Were you aware of the MCME event? And if not, or if so, does your Grand Lodge support it? Is your Grand Lodge interested? Do you have a regional, statewide conference that comes together for the sole purpose of Masonic education? Next, I want to read a piece from the Masonic Philosophical Society called Why Are We Here? By Kristen Wilson Slack. She posted this in January of 2021. The human condition. It is the characteristics, key events, and situations which compose the essentials of human existence, such as birth, growth, emotional nature, aspiration, conflict, and mortality. One key element was left off this Wikipedia definition: creation. Humans were born to create. We die hoping to have created enough. Humans were born to build, adjust, renovate, improve, birth, tend, cultivate. To create. This might be a general assumption of the readers here, but we are all searching for the meaning of life. Why are we here? If you're Neil Peart, the answer is because we're here. Roll the bones. If you're young, it is to quote-unquote realize a vision. The Bible, Isaiah 43:7, tells us that the purpose of man's existence is to glorify God. Pain, frustration, weakness, and chaos seem to all stem from a lack of purpose in our lives, or not having a goal toward which we strive. We come to the world's table with expectations, complications, and baggage. By the time we're ready to create something, we stumble. What are we doing here on Earth, at this time and place? We have way overthought the question. Our purpose is to create. It really is that simple. Creation. All of the examples above can be distilled to creation, from babies to business, from community to chaos to cash reserves. Humans cannot help but build something, even if it's a stack of beer cans beside the couch while we chill. We're building. Our minds want to make things bigger, better, faster, higher, more pleasing, more chaotic, different, and new. We build better drugs, faster cars, and higher buildings. Think carefully. When are you not creating? Even your body is creating while you sleep. A recent conversation with some friends involved discussing the attitudes of avatars, archetypes, and virtues. This was in conjunction with a question posed to an audience. Do you want to be God or a god? What an audacious question. Do I want to be God or a god? Oh heck no. Hubris has brought down many a man and woman, and I have no desire to experience that pain. It did bring me back to the question of why am I here then? Having thought about that often, I find it's difficult to distill a lifetime of thought into so simple of a question. Am I here to be good? Am I here to be a god? Or the god? That's a firm no in my mind. The very idea makes me shudder. I'm here to be a human being, the best expression of my own form of human being that I can be. Yes, that's it. Very firm no on the God thing. And then the wriggling, wormy, repetitive thoughts of humanness and godhood would not leave me alone. What is a god? To Webster, it is a being or object believed to have more than natural attributes and powers, and to require human worship, specifically, one controlling a particular aspect or part of reality. Greek gods of love and war. Interestingly enough, if it is capitalized, it means the supreme or ultimate reality. Whoa, wait, not a person? So someone who is a god controls part of the reality, but God, with a capital G, controls all of reality. Gods and gods create realities. They create. If our desire is to create, our very need for existence is to create, and God is commonly known as the Creator, the controller of reality. Well, yes, let's say it. Are we trying to be like God? Are we trying to be gods? It seems we humans do nothing but try to create and live in our own realities. In Genesis 1:26 through 28, the Bible talks about God making mankind in their image, and He made them man and woman. We'll set the plurality of that aside for right now, but divinization has been around for 2,000 years as a Christian concept. In the 2nd century, Irenaeus, Bishop of Lyons, circa 130 to 202, said that God, quote-unquote, became what we are in order to make us what He is Himself. Irenaeus also wrote, "If the world became a man, it was so men may become gods." Destiny. Maybe we have no choice. Our destiny, as a species, is to become gods, or godlike, or even God. We are inevitably going there through our experience of creating whatever it might be. As much mental gymnastics that we do via theology, psychology, astronomy, or astrology, it all ends up in the same destination. We live, we create, and we die to forward the human species to a return to their God home. We are creating our realities. We control our reality. People attach such deference, fear, and glory to the term God. I think, however, that it is the same way with ice cream and puppies, money and fame. It's a human lens viewing and interpreting, but it simply falls short. There is a rose-colored lens coding our idea of God, via religion or not, and that rose color makes everything pretty. What if it just is, and we're part of the it? We can categorize as archetypes or manifests as avatars or embody ideals, and in the end we create whatever is our own special aspect of the divine, the individual voice of God. Whatever you deem that to be becomes a painting, a piece of music, a child, a poem, a home, an organization, a community, or a new way of thinking. The aforementioned conversation inevitably turned into, well, we're either supposed to be gods or not, so what? If we're supposed to become higher expressions of ourselves, then that's great, but we're dead. The point is, humanity is constantly changing. Maybe we wouldn't go as far as saying evolving, but perhaps that is wrong. Perhaps evolution is not a conscious thing. That is, we evolve regardless of whatever we think about. It's not about being conscious about evolving. It's not even about evolving consciousness. The human being species continues to propel itself forward via creation. The evolution will be a reflection of that creation. I think we may have to forget about the what, evolution, and work toward the creations that are within our aspect of the God whole. In other words, if my God-given gift is speech, then speak. Speak to the best ability and training you can and make an impact. Stir people. Find the truth of what your little land plot is of God and make it prosperous. Forget fame and approbation. Do the best you are able, no matter what it is. Legacy. In truth, isn't that the legacy we're leaving for our descendants? For the humans that follow us, we're leaving what we create, whether it is more humans or more books, fine art, the echoes of music, or beautiful gardens. Maybe it is also a life saved because we cared enough to write the policies for the Red Cross that allowed that to happen, or because we ran the sound equipment that recorded Martin Luther King's speeches. It's the difference between someone finding a new way forward because you took the time to bring your gifts to an organization like Freemasonry, or not finding any kind of guiding light at all. Perhaps they would eventually through some other organization or group, yet it wouldn't be the same, would it? It would be different, and thus cast a different turn on the evolution of humanity. The best expression of who we are is the creations we give by utilizing our talents, whatever they may be. Like light in a prism, we are individual colors that come together to make a whole. The idea is that we contribute what God-like qualities we have to weave a whole that helps our descendants move closer to a better expression of the God-like qualities, and so on. Weird as that may be, maybe that's what our ancestors were also trying to say when they said that God made humans in their image, and God became Word, so that we could understand what it was like to be God. In our limited capacity as human beings, in a mortal world, we only see part of the whole. Similar to the workings of a Masonic lodge, where the many play their parts, but only one can see the all. We humans are the many. We're part of the all, but we don't get to see it yet. We don't get to play in that playground until it's time. When it is time for our individual self? No. When it is time for all, we get to move forward glacially. Progress measured in epochs. When the evolution clock ticks, it won't seem like evolution at all. I think this is a wonderful piece about the questioning, what we term in philosophy as the big questions. Why are we here? Certainly, she has given some wonderful context to her thoughts, and I think that these are questions we all ask. I think I would ask our Craftsman Plus here, nothing too philosophical, but perhaps just the question, what are you leaving behind? What is your greatest legacy that will be left behind for future generations? And now I'd like to get into this week's Masonic Minute with illustrious brother Stephen L. Harrison.
He was an aviation pioneer, a brilliant MIT graduate who became an expert in the development of more efficient aviation fuel, an air racing champion, an engineer who helped develop instrument flying, a war hero, and much more. The name James H. Jimmy Doolittle is synonymous with the brand of American hero who has it all: guts, brains, and above all, character. Born in 1896 in Alameda, California, Jimmy Doolittle was a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason who was raised in Hollenbeck Lodge 319 in Los Angeles on August 16, 1918. When his high school class attended an air show on a field trip in 1910, Doolittle saw his first airplane and developed a lifetime interest in flying. At the age of 21, he took a leave of absence from his studies at the University of California in Berkeley and enlisted in the Signal Corps Reserve as a flying cadet, being commissioned as a second lieutenant the following year. He served as a flight instructor during World War I, where his performance led to a commission as a first lieutenant in the Air Service. In 1922, he made one of the first cross-country flights, for which he earned the Distinguished Flying Cross, a ticket to the Air Service Engineering School, and eventually a scholarship to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In the 1930s, Doolittle was aviation manager for Shell Oil Company, where he was instrumental in developing a 100-octane fuel that, at the time, no aircraft needed. The fuel was expensive, and some of the Shell employees called the project Doolittle's $1 million blunder. He returned to active military service in 1940, and after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, was chosen to plan a retaliatory attack. Subsequently, he personally volunteered to lead that attack, taking off from the USS Hornet with several targets in Japan. The Japanese learned of the Hornet's position, forcing the Americans to initiate the attack from a location farther from Japan and jeopardizing the plane's capabilities to travel that far. On April 18, 1942, Doolittle led 16 B-25s to Tokyo and other Japanese cities in what is now known as the Doolittle Raid. The raid accomplished its purpose in destroying targets without doing much harm to the Japanese civilian population. But more than that, it put the Japanese on notice that the U.S. was capable of such long-range raids, and it greatly boosted U.S. morale. Critically low on fuel, the B-25s limped onto the Chinese mainland, where most landed safely behind friendly lines. Doolittle's heroic action in leading the raid earned him a promotion to general, the Congressional Medal of Honor, and later the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The added distance the planes had to fly in the successful Doolittle raid put many lives in jeopardy, and it became clear the raid would never have been successful except for the fact they carried that 100-octane fuel Brother Doolittle had himself developed a decade earlier before any aircraft required it, and without knowing what a significant effect it would have on his and his crew's lives many years later. In the end, it seems Doolittle's $1 million blunder paid off after all. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
What an amazing story about Jimmy Doolittle. I knew a lot about the man before, but I didn't know this story about the 100-octane fuel. They say nothing happens by coincidence. Maybe this was all part of the plan to develop a fuel to save many lives later in the future. A truly amazing story. If you like things like this, these kinds of stories, I cannot urge you enough to head on over to the bookstore, wcypodcast.com, click on bookstore, check out the books by Stephen L. Harrison. Notably, Freemasons Tales from the Craft is going to be right up your alley. Now, if you like the videos to go along with these kinds of stories, then you head on over to our YouTube channel. The Whence Came You YouTube channel has playlists where we've compiled the Masonic Minutes for you to be able to listen to and check out, and you can play them at lodge events or other places, maybe when you get rolling, or if you're rolling already in lodge. We'll be back next week to finish out Ancient and Modern Initiation, Chapter 7, but that's it for this week. So I want to thank our producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners for bringing this show to the masses. If you want to learn more about the WCY podcast and how you can help, head on over to the website, wcypodcast.com, click on Support the Show, and see how you can do that today. That's it, and I'll talk to you all next week. Until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.